so we're going to continue on from what we were doing in the last example. So with this one here, we're going to put them in ascending order, going from the smallest to the biggest. All right, so I've taken these decimals here in the question and I've put them down the page, lining up the decimal points, lining up the first decimal place, lining up the second decimal place, and for those that have got it, lining up the third decimal place. So they're all nice and neat. All right, so we've got 0.2, 0.202, 0.22, and 0.022. So remember, once we've lined them up, we then have a look at these ones here that have got the most number of decimal places, which is 3. And we're going to make sure that all the others have 3 decimal places. So get your red pen. And up here with this first one, we need to put 2 more zeros on to make 3 decimal places. And down here, we need to add another 1 0. So now we're going to try and put these in order. So if we have a look at them, we've got zeros at the beginning before the decimal point, so they're all the same. So then we can just concentrate on the stuff that's written after the decimal point. So really what we're looking at is these 3-digit numbers and we're putting them in order. So we have 200, 202, 220 and 22. So the smallest of these is 22. So that's number 1. The next biggest is 200. That's number 2. And the next biggest is 202. And then 220. So we're going to write those in order now, but without the red zeros. So our first one is 0.022. The second one, 0.2, without the red zeros. Then we have 0.202 for the third one. And the last one is just 0.22 without that red zero. So we're giving them in ascending order from smallest to biggest from the decimals that they gave us. Okay, the next one we're doing descending order. So descending order, to descend means to go down. So we want to start high at the biggest numbers and go down to the smallest. So we're still going to line them up in order, and I've already done that here. So here's the numbers in the question, and I've already lined them up. So now we'll put our red zeros on. So our biggest number of decimal places is 3 with these ones. So let's fill in these gaps. Now they've all got 3 decimal places. So we're going to look first at the whole number before the decimal point and see if we can put them in order first. So we have a 5, a 6, 5, 5. 3 is the smallest, but remember, we're starting at the biggest because we're doing descending order. So the biggest of these is the 6, and there's no other ones with a 6, so that's going to be our first one. Now after that, we're looking at the ones with the 5. Now there's a few of them. We're looking at this one, this one, this one, and this one. There's 4 of them to look at. So out of those ones, because they're all starting with a 5, we've got to look at what they finish with. So let's look at these 3 numbers here. All right, now we want the biggest to remember. So we've got 370, 639, 367 and 369. I'm sure you'll agree that 639 is biggest. We'll put that next. And out of the ones we have left, 370, 367, 369. 370 would be next, then 369, and then 367. Okay, so now we're left with the ones that started with a 3. So they both start with a 3, so we're just looking at the bit they finish with. So which one's bigger, 659 or 660? It's 660, isn't it? So we're going to put that as number 6, and then that's the last one. So now we put them all down without the red zeros in the order we said. So 6.539 goes first, 5.639 second, 5.37, no zero remember, for third, fourth one, 5.369, the fifth one, 5.367, then this one without the zero, 3.66, and then number 7, 3.659. And that's the end of that question. Okay, so looking at the next one. Again, I've already lined them up in order, nice and neatly, decimal points under decimal points. And now we're looking to put the red zeros in to fill up our spaces. So we go down filling up our spaces with our red zeros. Now remember, we want the biggest one first. Well, if we look down here at the whole numbers, they're all zeros except for this one, and that's a lot bigger than the zeros are. So that's going to be going first. All right, now out of the ones that are left, they all start with a 0 on the whole number side. So we're looking at all of these 3-digit numbers, and we're going to do the biggest one. So 770, 707, 770, and 007 or 007 like James Bond is 7. So the biggest will be 770, then 707, then 700, and then we're left with 70 and 7. So 70 is next, and 7 is last. So let's write them down in order. Number 1, 7.07. No 0, remember, we're not putting the red zeros on. Number 2, 0.77, no 0. Number 3, 0.707. Number 4, 0.7, no zeros on the end. 0.07 for number 5. And 0.007 for number 6. So I know it's a little bit fiddly, but I guarantee you if you put them down the page first, it's worth the effort because you will get it right then. Okay, so let's look at the next question. All right, so we're going to insert less than or greater than. So the way I remember it is that this looks like an L. So to me, that looks like a capital L, so that's less. All right, so the other one must be greater than. Now I know some of you have learned with the crocodile mouths where the biggest part of the mouth is. You can remember it however you like, as long as you're going to get them right. All right, so this one here, we need to know which of these signs is going in that box. So this is 0.2 and 0.25. Now remember, that's got 2 decimal places. So if we put this one as 2 decimal places, it would be, I'll put it in black pen so that you can see what I'm doing. So 0.2. Now, if we put another decimal place on the end, put our red 0 there, which one is bigger? That is, isn't it? So it's the 25 instead of 20. 25 is bigger than 20. So if we read it left to right, we're going to say 20 is less than 25. So that's the way the sign will go. So looking at the next one, this has got 3 decimal places here. So we really need to take our 1.59 and make sure that's got 3 decimal places. So I'm going to put a red 0 there. Now let's look at them. They both start with a 1. So forget about that bit. After the decimal point, you're looking at these 2 things. So 590 and 59. So I know that you know that 590 is greater than 59, so that's what we're going to write there, the greater than symbol. All right, in the next one, we have 44.44 and 4.444. So you only really need to look at the bit before the decimal point here. So this is 44 and 4. And I know that you know that 44 is greater than 4. So that's what we're going to write there. Okay, so there's a little bit of fiddliness with these things, but really make sure the decimal places are the same so you can compare them. All right, now this next question. We're writing a decimal that is between 8.25 and 8.5. Now there are many correct answers here, right? Lots and lots, there's an infinite number of correct answers. And there's plenty of wrong answers too. So you could say, well, they both start with an 8, but then they're different here. in the first decimal place. That's a 2 and that's a 5. So between the 2 and the 5, we've got a 3 and we've got a 4. So the easiest way to give a correct answer, because they only want one decimal, would be to say 8.3 or maybe 8.4. They're the easiest correct answers to write. But of course you could write down 8.37, 8.342. It doesn't matter what you add on the end of it, as long as it's got the 8.3. 8.4, you can write whatever you like on the end of that, 8.47256. That'd be right. There's also some other correct answers that start with 8.2, but you've got to be a bit careful with that. Okay, so 8.26 would be okay because it's bigger than this. 8.27, any of those. So but let's just stick to the easier way and go for the easier way of doing it. Now, having said that, this next one is a bit tricky, right? So this question's a bit hard because it's not going to be as easy to do as what we just did then. So it starts with a 6, both of them, and they're different here. Now you go, all right, well I've got to go between 3 and 4. What's between 3 and 4? I can't think of a number between 3 and 4. It's got to be between them, remember. So what we can do here to make it easier is if I do this and put another decimal place on the end, the 0, and then this one over here, put a 0 on the end of that one. Now, instead of trying to go between 3 and 4, you're trying to go between 30 and 40. And that makes it much easier to do. So I could say, all right, well, I'll go right in the middle and say 6.35. Or you could say 6.31, 6.32, 6.38, 6.39. Any of those are between 30 and 40. Okay, so that's the easier way of doing it when you think you've got nowhere to go. Just put the 0 on the end and then look at it. Okay, now the number lines that we're doing here, we're going to complete the number lines, but it's the parts with the red dots that we're looking at. So I hope you can see them there. So what I've got here, you draw up this number line yourself with a ruler, make sure it's straight. Now I've got it marked off into intervals, so you will need 11 marks. So make sure you go along and mark 11 marks for me. And then after you've done that, just freeze the video for a little bit. Make sure you've got the 11 marks measured out. And then you're going to put 8.0 underneath the first mark. Then you're going to count across. Second, third, fourth, fifth. Under the sixth one, you're going to write 8.1. Seventh, eighth. Under the ninth one, you're going to write 8.16. And then under that last mark, the 11th mark, you'll write 8.2. Now the red dots are here on the second mark, here on the fourth mark, and here just one mark past the 8.1. And we have to tell them what those decimals are. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at the 8 and the 8.1. So just draw a big jump between 8 and 8.1. Now what we're looking at is counting the spaces, not the marks so much. So watch the spacing. 1, 2, 3, 4, there's 5 spaces there. So if we look at it, now you can use your calculator if you like to help you here if you need to. But what we're doing is doing 8.1 take away 8.0. Now if you use your calculator to do that, you'll get 0.1. Right, so the big gap between them is 0.1. Now, if you look at how many jumps we have here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 jumps. So we're going to take the 0.1 and we're going to divide by 5. Use your calculator to do that and you will end up with, is that right? Let's just double check. Yep, that would be right. Okay, so it's going to be 0.02. All right, so what that means is each little jump is 0.02. Okay, so for me to work out these red dots then, I'm going to go, right, I've got 8.0, I'm going to add on 0.02, so you can get your calculator, do 8.0 plus one jump of 0.02, and that will give you 8.02. That's under your first dot. All right, now you've got 8.02 on your calculator. You can add another 0.02 and add another 0.02 and press equals and you'll get what you have here. And that should end up being 8.06. Okay, so now we're going to jump over here to the 8.1. So in your calculator, put 8.1, then we're going to add a 0.02, and that answer there will be 8.12. So there's the three answers that they wanted for the three dots. Okay, now I know that some of you might have looked at it and gone, well, I knew what they were already without doing all that working. If you did know, that's fantastic, and you can just fill in what those dots are. But some of you will need to do this on the harder questions to get you through it. Okay, so let's look at the next one. We're going to do a ruler number line with your ruler. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 marks. So put 11 equally spaced marks on your ruler. Mark them all on with little marks. And then just freeze the video and then come back to me when you've done that. Okay, so then under the first mark you're going to write 4.3. Under the third mark you're going to write 4.4. Under the fifth mark you're going to write 4.5. Under the seventh mark you're going to write 4.6. And under the ninth mark you're going to write 4.7. Now where are the dots? Okay, well this dot is the mark between the 4.4 and the 4.5. This dot here is the mark in between 4.5 and 4.6. This one here is a bit tricky, right? So this red dot here, you've got 4.6, then you've got a mark, and then the 4.7. Now this dot is between these two marks. Okay, so that's a bit tricky where you're going to put that right in the middle of these two. Okay, then on the next two marks at the end, you're going to put two red dots. All right, so let's have a look. If we go from here to here, if I do on my calculator 4.5 minus 4.4, I'm going to get 0.1. Then if you look at how many jumps we have in that space, we have two little jumps. So we're going to do 0.1 divided by two little jumps, and you'll end up with 0.05. Okay? So that means that every little jump is going to be 0.05. So we need to get this one in the middle. So we can do 4.4, one jump over here. So I'm going to add 0.02 for one of those jumps there. 0.05, sorry. So we're doing 4.4 plus 0.05. Press equals, and your calculator will give you 4.45. So that's what that first mark there with the first red dot is. Let's come over to this next red dot. I'm going to start at the 4.5, put that in your calculator, then do plus 0.05 and press equals, and your calculator will give you this, 4.55. All right, let's come back over to these last two and I'll come back to this tricky one here. So start at the 4.7. add one little jump, so add 1.05, so 4.7 plus 0.05 gives you 4.75. So let's start at the 4.75 now with your calculator, plus 0.05, and your calculator will give you 4.8 for that last one. So we've got 4 of the red dots, but we're still missing this one here. So it's a little bit tricky. Okay, so you know that that little gap is 0.05. So what could this gap be here? Now this is only for those people that can cope with it. If you can't cope with this one, just turn the video off now and go and do the work that's on Compass. Alright? But if you think you can handle it, just keep with me. So this bit is half of 0.05. Right? So if we work that out, we've got 0.05. Halving it is like dividing by 2. And if we work that out on the calculator, we will get 0.025, 0.025. So the best way of getting there is to just go, well, all right, I'm going to start at the 4.7 and I'm going to go backwards to that point. So I'm going to do 4.7 and I'm going to take off, because I'm going the other way now, 0.025. And your calculator will give you 4.675. Okay? So if there is any questions at all on this work, please email me. But you're not going to get too many that are like that. That's why I've done this one on the board. All right? So the bit in blue, that tricky bit at the end, is only for those of you that are going really well with this work. Okay? Good luck with your homework.